It's insane the increase in productivity when people are allowed to do their jobs how they best thrive. Another fallacy in our Western society is that we're meant to be well-rounded. And that's just bogus. It's just not true.
Hello and welcome to the Daily Helping with Dr. Richard Schuster. Food for the brain, knowledge from the experts, tools to win at life. I'm your host, Dr. Richard. Whoever you are, wherever you're from, and whatever you do, this is the show that is going to help you become the best version of yourself. Each episode, you will hear from some of the most amazing, talented, and successful people on the planet who followed their passions and strive to help others. Join our movement to get 1 million people each day to commit acts of kindness for others. Together, we're going to make the world a better place. Are you ready? Because it's time for your Daily Helping. Thanks for listening to the latest episode of the Daily Helping with Dr. Richard Schuster. Food for the brain, knowledge from the experts, tools to win at life. I'm your host, Dr. Richard, and this week's guest is going to be tremendously fun and interesting. In fact, you might mistake my guest today for Superwoman, and if you do, you won't be alone. But Alissa believes you have superpowers too. Alissa Daire-Nelson is regularly featured on television news segments, inside major blogs and publications, and on podcasts from all over the globe. She's an accomplished success coach, speaker, host of the Maximize Your Strengths podcast, as well as published author of the hot new book, From Frustration to Frickin Awesome, 4 Steps to Achieve the Success You're Wired For. But more than anything else, she is an exceedingly proud wife and mother of 2 who loves helping others discover how to make their businesses and relationships thrive in harmony. Alissa, welcome to the show.
Well, Dr. Richard, thank you for having me. I am so excited, and our pre-chat was amazing and already has me all excited, so I just can't wait for what's to come.
No, it's going to be so much fun. I am really excited as well. And I want to jump in because your focus is really helping people find and maximize their strengths. And I want to take a step back before we really go down the mechanics of that. What got you interested in that? How did you end up doing this and really becoming passionate about it?
Part of it was, a big part of it, in fact, was me trying to figure out what was wrong with me and then having this epiphany moment that maybe there was a whole lot that was right with me, and the things that maybe I saw as wrong with me were actually right with me, and just kind of flipped that entire thing on its head. And so when I really found out that I could focus on my strengths and build those rather than trying to fix all of the things that I found or other people found to be wrong with me, that was a much more joyful and productive place to live.
No, it certainly makes sense. So as you began focusing on your own strengths, then you had that shift, I presume, to say, hey, I can share this with others.
Yeah. And, I do believe that the message that you're sent to give out in the world is oftentimes the message that you need to learn first yourself. And through that, you have the ability to give that message from a more authentic and a more compassionate perspective that opens up the door so people don't feel judged, and they, oh yeah, okay, well, if she felt that way, maybe, and now it's this way, maybe I can feel that way too. And so it really was that when I had this total red pill, blue pill moment about all the things that were right with me, all I wanted to do was then help other people to discover that in themselves.
And props to you, Alissa, for the Matrix reference, because we don't have enough of those in our society.
I love that movie.
No, and it's so, for those that are entrepreneurs, it is such an apt illustration. Once you've taken the red pill, you often see things very differently. We could do a whole show just about that. But I know that for you, I want to jump back because I know that a lot of what you're doing is predicated on the StrengthsFinder profile, which a lot of people might not have heard of. Could you talk to us about what the StrengthsFinder profile is, and then we'll go from there about how people can apply it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the StrengthsFinder profile is a psychometric tool that Dr. Donald Clifton, created over 40 years of research. He comes from a background of positive psychology and thought, hey, what if we just focused on the things that were right with people instead of all the things that were wrong with people? So he spent literally from 1960 until the year 2000 doing research study after research study after research study on what would happen if we focused on all the good. And that's how the StrengthsFinder profile was born, was through that research. What I liked about that, what I was drawn to with the StrengthsFinder profile, is that unlike a lot of other personality tests, there was so many different strength themes that you sort of could fit into. So it wasn't like one of four boxes that you fit into, like the DISC profile. You're a D, an I, an S, or a C. Or, Myers-Briggs even, where you're one of 16 boxes, right? So it really allowed you this expansive view on each individual person. Layered on top of that, all sorts of other things. And, it's a fantastic tool. But it really is just a tool. So just like a drill or a hammer or anything else, if you don't know how to use it, well, what's the point? You can have 1,000 of them and it won't do you any good. So that's the root started with Donald Clifton and his team. And since 2000, when the StrengthsFinder first came out, it has been revamped, which is why it's StrengthsFinder 2.0 now. And the research through Gallup has continued. So 16.5 million, I think, people now have taken the StrengthsFinder profile. And the question is, are they applying it? Are they actually able to use that tool?
Fantastic. And what I love that you said is that this is not one of those Facebook share with your friends, what does my personality indicate? This is an empirically driven 60 plus years of information in validating and updating this tool. And it has a large number of boxes, so to speak, as you mentioned, that show different personality constructs for people in terms of their strengths.
Yeah, exactly. And what's interesting as well, it's just something I want to point out. So it's called the StrengthsFinder, and that is really what it's doing. So when you take your profile for the first time, what it's going to tell you is sort of your aptitude in each of these different areas. Like, for instance, my number one strength is futuristic. I happen to know, Richard, that yours is also futuristic at number one, which means that just we have a knack or a talent for being able to really paint a cool picture of the future. Very visionary, and some other things that naturally come to us, sort of our easy buttons, but they don't become strengths until we actually are using them in a way that serves us or gives us energy and also serves other people. So we can't just use our strengths to abuse or manipulate other people. That's not a strength. That's manipulation, right? So it's the StrengthsFinder. And again, this is why there's this gap between taking the profile and applying it.
So that's something you've mentioned a couple of times. So we go out and we purchase this. We see what our 5 strengths are. How do you apply it? And we have this list of things and it says, I'm futuristic oriented. What does that mean? How can I use that?
Yeah. Well, there's a couple of things. And, when you get your StrengthsFinder profile, Gallup does provide you a couple of free tools, free reports. And so you can certainly read over those. You can read the StrengthsFinder 2.0 book, and it gives you some idea of application. Where I've found it to really be much more applicable is when you can talk it out with someone who is an expert. Now, I also don't think that, you should take a $20 test, or if you unlock all 34, $90 test, and then have to follow it up by hiring a coach for $4,000 or $5,000 to help you understand it, right? So that was the biggest driving force behind me starting my podcast, Maximize Your Strengths, is that I wanted to have a tool where people could, or, a resource where people could start to understand, what does this actually mean in an applicable way? Sort of take them through construction training 101. Like, how do you use a hammer? Do you use it on a screw or do you use it on a nail? Well, of course you're going to use it on a nail. Well, can you use it on a nail this size? Can you use it on... And so that's the next piece of actually applying it and understanding that there are pros to these strengths, and when they're misused, they can become a weakness. And also understanding, in addition, I'm being really long-winded here, I apologize. but that those things that pop into your top 5 truly are unique to you. One of the things that I hear very frequently from people who have just taken is like, well, yeah, it sounds like me, so that's cool. And it to them, it sounds like a horoscope, right? Like you can read the Sunday horoscope and be like, okay, yeah, so anything could be construed this way, but how do I know this is actually me? Well, the things that are uniquely you are your easy buttons, are the things that come so easily for you that you might not recognize them as things that set you apart. And so in doing so, in recognizing that those things are actually unique to you, now suddenly when people do it differently than you, it's not an irritation because they're like, why can't you get it? Why can't you just, talk to me a little bit? Well, maybe they have communication at number 34 and self-expression just doesn't come easily for them. When you understand that there are those differences there, now you can respect and honor even the people that you come into contact with.
So in a way, it not only helps you understand your strengths, but it helps you perhaps better relate to others as well.
Totally. And it comes back to this major point that is a real soapbox issue for me, is that you shining bright does not have to detract from anyone else shining bright. So I can, and this is where the name of my book came from, was we have this focus on being humble in our society. And so we don't want to stand up and say, hey, I am frickin' awesome. Because people might think we're arrogant, or they might think, this or that about us. But the fact of the matter is that that's exactly what we need. Because what it does when you do that when you stand up and say I'm awesome with humility, it allows other people to also be awesome. And when you recognize that you're awesome, your flavor of awesome is not their flavor of awesome, now it doesn't matter that you stand up and say, hey, I'm really great at these things. I would love to contribute in this way. And they go, oh, wow, that's great. I'm really great at these things and I want to contribute in this way. And now we have synergy and we have people coming together to create amazing things instead of everyone shying away from the limelight.
I think one of the things that is also intuitive about it, and correct me if I'm wrong, but in knowing what your strengths are and then conversely knowing what are not your strengths, you can then leverage the talents of others and perhaps build better teams that way too.
Totally. And I so much encourage that, because we cannot be good at everything. Another fallacy in our Western society is that we're meant to be well-rounded. And that's just bogus. It's just not true. We were never built to be well-rounded. So if that's true, then what if we just gave that up and said, hey, I'm great at these things, you're great at these things, you're great at these things. Let's come together, and together we can be well-rounded.
So I think we're going down this path, which is taking us a bit more into a corporate application. And I want to bring it back eventually towards more in the home and some other things. But obviously, a lot of people who listen to your show and mine are entrepreneurial in nature. So if one is a business owner and they identify, okay, I've got these strengths, can they then go and use this as a tool to help find other employees? Why or why not?
Yeah, so that is a use that people would love to use it for, because it gives them a sort of a definitive tool, right? Like, okay, I need woo, and I need someone with analytical, and I need someone with futuristic. Great, I'm going to go out and, hire somebody with those with those strengths. But the difficulty with that is that your strengths will show you the how you go about doing your tasks and skills and those kinds of things. But it doesn't actually tell you anything about skill level. So you might need somebody on your team who has great communication skills. But if they're not communicating with the knowledge and the background that you need them to, those communication skills don't matter. So I always tell people the StrengthsFinder is very important so that you can empower your people and help them to live in their strengths. But here's the key: hire them for their values and their skills, And then after they're hired, now give them the StrengthsFinder profile so that you can help them do their job, how they will most have energy or have most positive energy. Does that make sense?
It does. So in essence, this is not a hiring tool in any way.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. That's absolutely correct.
But utilized appropriately, it sounds like after the fact, when you found people that fit, one's company culture, you can then leverage their strengths, a strengths-based culture, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, the data shows over and over again that a strengths-based culture, one that is focused on building what's already good in people, has much better production and much better revenue. I don't have all the stats in front of me right at the moment, but I mean, it's insane the increase in productivity when people are allowed to do their jobs how they best thrive.
It makes a lot of sense. Talk to us. I want to jump and talk about your book, because I think that's the next logical place for us to move to, because you said that you essentially made this book because you wanted to help people pull these strengths and so their candle could shine so bright. Perhaps I'm paraphrasing there a bit, but let's talk about it.
So, I created the book From Frustrated to Frickin Awesome because, so many business owners, especially when they come to me, when they're so absolutely burnt out, they feel like their life is completely imbalanced. They're spinning their wheels. They're not being productive, right? And when I can teach them about their strengths, right, it allows them space to go, oh, so I can delegate this off and I can do this and I can do that. But, the StrengthsFinder profile isn't the only thing. And I've already alluded to that a little bit. But, in order to really, truly be frickin' awesome, you have to take into consideration all of the other things that make you uniquely you. And by embracing all of those things, instead of going, oh, well, there was my sophomore year of high school, we're just going to not touch that. And I'm not going to sort of get famous or have a business that booms in my hometown because there's this thing that happened when I was in 10th grade that I'm just going to shy away from. Really embracing all of those life experiences is a part of helping you to live out loud. And yes, the book is geared towards entrepreneurs. However, the feedback that I've gotten from people who are in corporate all the way across to stay-at-home moms and of course entrepreneurs is, oh my gosh, I'm starting to actually be proud of who I am and not be apologetic about it. And that is incredible because that strengthens marriages. It strengthens relationships, whether that's, interfamily or, personal relationships or business relationships, because you feel good about you and therefore you're able to provide more honor and more grace to those around you as well.
I love everything you just said because I relate to it in the sense that this show is about helping people become the best versions of themselves. And in turn, when we do that, we're happier, more productive, and we will make the world a better place. So you are so singing my song. It's unbelievable. I want to spoil the book a little bit here. 4 steps to achieve the success you're wired for. Could you take us through what those 4 steps are?
Yeah, so it's not complicated, and I think that's one of the beauties of it. Is sometimes we make these really complicated, 40-point steps, right, or 40-point plans, and that no one can ever actually carry out. But step 1 is know thyself. And so in the book, I take people through a series of exercises to help them really understand who they are and in black and white, with proof how awesome they are. Because we can hear that all we want, but until we actually internalize it and embrace it, it doesn't become true. Right? So know thyself, know where you thrive, know where you don't thrive. The second step is now create a plan around that. And it's okay to use somebody else's template to create that plan, but now you know yourself well enough to tweak that plan so it actually fits you. So create the plan, carry out that plan, and then the last step is to simply reflect on what worked, what didn't work, what did I learn about myself, and now we're going to go back to the beginning. Now, know thyself, right? So you just repeat those 4 steps, and over time, you become better and better and better. And the cool thing is that you will never reach that point where you know it all. And for me and my futuristic, that's one of my favorite things for people who would like to just have the answer and arrive and then, and then do no more work. Well, this might not be the book for you, but if you want a really pragmatic approach to how do I continually improve without focusing on all of my weaknesses, this is that book.
Right. No magic 8-ball here where you just shake it once and have a response. So know thyself, create a plan, carry out the plan, and then reflect.
Yes.
And the reflect sounds a lot like what Stephen Covey talks about in Sharpening the Saw to me.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have an entire chapter in the book that is just simply reflective questions. And that's just a starting point because there's more questions that you could certainly ask. But asking them from a point of non-judgment towards yourself, as well as, really from this place of learning. Okay, what did I learn from this mistake? How could I make it better? And, I happen to believe that there is no such thing as bad luck. In fact, in the book, I share a little story that I was recommended to take out because people are like, that doesn't really shine very well on you, Alissa. I'm like, hey, it was a mistake I made, but it wasn't bad luck. So let's just share it because there's other people who have been in that same situation. So you'll have to read the book to know what that story is because it is a little bit embarrassing and it has to do with an oil change.
Oh my goodness.
So, but if we can track that back and go, okay, so if it wasn't bad luck, what was it? Was there a root cause? Is there any way I could have avoided it? Some of those questions, now we can better move forward with both preparing ourselves a little bit better for the next cycle around so that those sort of quote unquote bad luck things don't continue to happen. Because we all know people, right, who like bad stuff just happens to them all the time.
That's right.
Right? And you just like, how does this person have that bad of luck? Well, the fact of the matter is that they don't. Number one, they probably are focusing on negative things. So negative things seek them out. So there is that law of attraction there. But also, they're not protecting themselves against some of those bad luck things.
And I think, what a lot of people experience is, yes, certainly, when you get used to patterns, you only focus on those patterns, but it's also not taking a step back and say, what could I do differently? A lot of times, bad luck is, making the same poor decision over and over and over again, just in a different way.
Yeah. And, and again, kind of going back to that whole, what we focus on. I was kind of giggling to myself just this morning about, something that recently happened to my husband and I. So we have a big, beautiful maple tree in our front yard. And, as luck would have it, a root ball got into our sewer pipeline thingy. And on Saturday, my husband walked down into our basement to find it totally flooded. So like replacing the carpet and now homeowner's claim and like all of this, work. And we've got, I can't tell you how many machines down in our basement trying to dry it out and yada, yada. And yet it wasn't even a Facebook post. Like it wasn't even like, okay, that's just a thing that happened. And, we deal with it and we move on. And, oh, look, we might get new carpets. So that could be a good thing. And, we have to pay the deductible and all of that other stuff. But what was interesting is my husband and I are people who focus on the positive. So that's why it didn't end up even being a Facebook post because we don't care that this negative thing happened. It happened. So what? We fixed the problem. Now we're moving on. And, I do have friends that would have made, a giant issue of this thing and gone, oh my gosh, I don't know why bad stuff just happens. Well, bad stuff happens, but I don't have to let it make my entire week or month bad. Right? So what are you focusing on?
It's so well said. And you're exactly right. And one of the things that Facebook does is Facebook attracts. So it attracts good and bad. So if you're putting that out there, oh my God, my life is ruined, my house is flooded, I have to replace the carpeting, you're going to get 10 million people who are going to say, I feel sorry for you, what a horrible thing. And you're like, yeah, that's right. Woe is me. Whereas if you take the opposite approach, the positive approach, then it reframes that completely differently. Really frickin' awesome, if I may.
Really frickin' awesome. Exactly.
Now, Alissa, one of the things that this book is all about is it's helping people really learn what sets them apart from every other person on this planet.
Mm-hmm.
Are there specific exercises that you could, just a few, that you could talk us through that one could do to start that path?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one, of course, is take the StrengthsFinder profile. And I give some additional resources in the book to help understand them a little bit better. So it's not just the profile that you're taking. You learn a little bit of the application of that. So certainly one is that. But number two, there's actually 4 different really important exercises in order to really figure out, how am I like one of a kind? Like, prove it to me. One is, what is your educational background? An education is never wasted. I have 2 4-year degrees, and I am not currently using either one of them in a professional way, right? But I use both of those 4-year degrees every day in what I do, right? So that education is never lost, and the informal education. What books have you read? What conferences have you attended? What learning have you done? So that's one thing, is what is your education? Another thing is, what is your life experiences? And this one is a tough one for some people, because they think, well, this bad thing happened to me, and, I just want to forget it. But the thing is that bad experience is part of, what has framed up how you think and where you're going, right? So, and the different places that you have more compassion. So all of your life experiences, both positive and negative, matter. So write down all of the life experiences that really come to mind, and then go talk to another person about it. Hey, what do you remember from childhood? I had that conversation with my older sister, who's 10 years older than me, and she had some amazing insight about things that I didn't even realize from my childhood that really did frame up how I think. Then your values. What are your values? How are they framed? And what's the most important thing to you? And so I take the people through an entire values exercise, so they actually categorize and prioritize their values. And it's a really, really powerful exercise to go through, because sometimes you look at it and go, whoa, these are my current priorities, but they're out of whack. Right. And then now you can do the work to get them back in whack, right? Or in line. And sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, yeah, these are my values. So let's live in those. That's fantastic. So those 4 things, your education, your experience, your values, and your strengths, you put those 4 things together, and I guarantee you will not ever find another person that is like you.
And once you have that knowledge, how do you leverage it? Once you know how you're special?
It depends on if you are an entrepreneur or if you are working in a 9-to-5, right? But as an entrepreneur, these are the folks that I work with most. It's how do you set yourself out in a crowded field? Because I don't care what business you're in, whether you're a business coach or a psychiatrist or a psychologist or you're a chiropractor, there's a lot of other people who are out there doing quote unquote the same thing. But your uniqueness is what draws in the clients that you want to serve. And it also is the place where you're going to thrive, where you can stand on top of the hill and say, I am the only one who offers this to this particular client. So it helps to form not only what your unique selling proposition is, right? But it also helps to draw in the particular type of client that you want most to serve. We talk about the 80-20 rule. I don't know if you've ever read The Pumpkin Plan or not, by Mike Michalowicz. So he talks about, 80% of your clients are not really serving you. So the 20% of your clients are giving you 80% of your income. So what would happen if you just pruned the 80% and left more room for the people that you love to serve? And that's the power in doing these exercises and really figuring out who am I that translates into who do I best connect with and who do I want to serve, and now do more of that.
I am not familiar with that particular book, but I am familiar with the 80-20 rule, and I know that a lot of entrepreneurs live by that. So outstanding to hear you bring that up. And I want to revisit something, Alissa, that you mentioned I mentioned in reading your bio, is that your passion is helping others discover how to make their businesses and relationships thrive in harmony. Yet I know that you really don't believe in the notion of a work-life balance. So help us reconcile that.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you use those particular words. So I do believe in harmony. I don't believe in balance. So balance is, this sort of one side of the scale, other side of the scale, others, and we're trying to like walk across a tight wire, and you're gonna fall off because at some points, your business needs more, and at some points your family needs more. However, if we think about running our businesses in harmony, now, that we have 18 plates in the air, it's just like having, a violin, a violin portion of our orchestra and cellos and, some other instruments too, right? But if they're all playing in the same tune, they sound beautiful together. So how can you allow your business to work in harmony with your family? For me, right before we hopped on this call, I was driving my kids to and from gymnastics. It's the middle of the day, right? But that's how my family works in harmony. So, I don't cut out 9 to 5 to work. I do work a little bit in the evening, but that means I have a little time during the day where I can take some time out for my family. So it's not perfectly balanced, but it works in harmony. Does that make sense? Does that clarify that?
No, it really does. And I'm glad that you were able to elaborate on that distinction, because you hear everybody talk about work-life balance, and your perspective, I think, is much healthier.
Yeah. And that way we don't have to compartmentalize, because especially as sole entrepreneurs and very small business owners, like your business is one of your babies. So for you to like shove it in a box and put it away doesn't make any sense. And yet, even with your children, it's important to give them one-on-one time, right? So you can still do that and have them all work together.
I think one of the true lies of entrepreneurship is, I have to do this now. And when I was training at the Emory School of Medicine, one of the residents said to me, the work will always get done. And what he meant by that was you can table it. And so I'm not saying if you have a deadline and you promised a customer a deliverable that, you go get pizza and go bowling, but there's time. Like you said, you can go to your kid's gymnastics class and write another proposal where they're sleeping. We always can make excuses as to why we need to do that work, but then we blink and our kids are 17 and going off to college and we've missed them grow up. So what you said so strongly resonated with me. I think that's terrific.
Yeah. Thank you for that. It is such an important thing, and some people want to keep their business away from their family as well. Like, I don't want to work when my kids are awake or this or that. But I'll tell you what. So my daughters are 9 and 11, and they are actually now working in my business. There's some tasks and things that they can do, and we have a timer app on their phones, and they get paid for the work they do in my business. And they literally get to work side by side with me in my office when they have tasks to do. And it's not a detraction that they see me work. It's showing them, this is what a work ethic looks like. So it's not a negative thing to combine the two. You still need to have healthy boundaries and yada, yada, yada. We could get into a whole dissertation on that, but you don't have to keep it separate, because there are great life lessons for your children if you do involve them in your business too.
As you said, one's business and relationships thriving in harmony.
Mm-hmm. Bingo.
Right on. And I want to just take a couple moments and talk about your coaching, because a lot of businesses and a lot of entrepreneurs use coaching, but your coaching's a little bit different because of its focus. Could you talk to us about that?
Yeah. So I now work with my clients in 90-day stints, because I have a strength in my top 5 called activator, which means I love to get going and I love to get moving and I love to see action and I love to see results. So that's what works best for me as a coach, because you have to pay attention to what your needs are as well. And that what the bonus for my clients is that they get to see these results in a really fast way. So once they realize and they really vet out what their superpowers are, now they're working so much more productively and so much more efficiently. And when they do that, they're working smarter, not harder. And so they're saving time, they're creating more revenue, and they are doing all of it with more energy. And that really is the trio that business owners are looking for. How do I spend less time but make more money and love what I do? Not burn out from what I'm doing. And so that's what's a little bit different is I really focus on what are your superpowers. Now let's go claim them and live in them. Put on your cape, take off your Clark Kent clothes, and let's go fly.
Perfect. Alissa, as you know, I wrap up with a question that I ask all of my guests, and that is if you could share with us your biggest helping, the single most important piece of information you'd like somebody to walk away with after listening to our episode together.
That one thing is that you truly, and I really want you to hear this as it's in your earbuds right now, you are unique and you're uniquely awesome. And that in and of itself should make you stand taller and live brighter. And, spend some time figuring out what those things are because you're worth it. You didn't end up on this planet on accident.
Perfect. Alissa, where can people find you?
So they can find me on my website. That's a great place. And also on Facebook. Facebook is my jam. It's where I like to hang out. I'm not a Twitter fan. I have a hard time talking in 140 characters. So Facebook, Dare Success Coaching on Facebook, or dare2succeed.com. It's DAIRE, the number 2, succeed.com.
I love that. And we will also have in the Daily Helping app and on the show notes the link to all of this, and including your book.
Yes, I would love to share my book with those of you who are listening. So if you go to dare2succeed.com/TDH, which stands for The Daily Helping, you can get a PDF copy, a digital copy of my book for absolutely free. So dare2succeed.com/TDH.
That is outstanding. And I hope that our listeners certainly take advantage of that because it is a terrific book. Wow. Well, that is so cool. And I wish we could talk longer. We are at time today. I want to thank you, Alissa, so much for coming on to our show. And for all of you in your cars at home or wherever you are, thank you for listening today. If you like what you heard, go out there and subscribe to the show on iTunes and leave us a 5-star review. That's what helps others find the podcast. Thanks again. And do something today where you go out and do something nice for somebody else, even if you don't know them, especially if you don't know them. Post it on your feeds using the hashtag MyDailyHelping, because the happiest people are those that help others.